Each of the three candidates will speak for about 10 minutes at the beginning about their positions on jobs and economic development and about their candidacies. And then we'll move to a question and answer section from the audience for the rest of the night. And then at the end, each candidate will give a closing statement, and you're welcome to stick around. There's still plenty of food in the bag. Maybe the candidates will have some time to stick around at the end. But each candidate will speak in alphabetical order by last name. So I'll introduce them in that order. We have Grant Connors from the Republican Party. Daughtry from the Democratic Party. And Fred Horch from the Green Party. So I'd first like to introduce Grant Connors. Grant is a retired middle school teacher, and he taught locally for 40 of his 45 years in education. He was running for the legislature because he was asked to fill in for someone who could not run at the last minute. And he is running primarily because he wants to make sure that his 9, 7, and 2-year-old grandchildren will have a better Maine with more job opportunities and a better chance to stay here and work when they grow up. So without further ado, Mr. Grant Connors.
Thank you very much.
There's seats up front. I see a bunch of people hanging out in the back. You can come forward. We don't fight, I promise. Come sit.
Mike, Kevin, Christian.
Thank you. It's quite nice to speak to real people instead of these guys. Thanks.
My name is Grant Connors, and I'm running for the legislature in District 66. I guess I can pick this up, whatever. Anyway, I'm running because I was asked to run, and I recently retired a year ago, and I don't know what to do with myself. My wife has lots of things for me to do, but I don't want to do them. And when I was asked at the last minute to run, I had no reason not to. And then I really didn't think I had a reason to. But then thinking of my grandchildren, I spend an awful lot of time with them. And it scares me because I want them to have jobs. And I want them to, I want them to be able to stay in Maine. I have a son who joined the military a little while ago. He got a degree in this state, and he wanted to become a school teacher. He did not have a teaching degree, but he had a degree. And he, because I've always taught, and my wife taught for a long time, he wanted to do the same thing. He subbed for 5 years and couldn't keep an apartment. He was subbing almost every day, but couldn't keep an apartment and couldn't live. So he joined the military, the Navy, at 29 and a half, just before they closed the door on him. And he's pretty happy, but he's out of state. He's in Tennessee. And my family is a close family, and he misses very much the fact that he cannot see his nieces and nephews grow up. And he's someplace where he doesn't necessarily want to be, but he's at least got some options at this point in time right now. I'm 69 years old, and that's not, the only way that's to remain, I guess, is the fact that my 2-year-old, when she's 20, I'll be 87, if I'm around, and that scares me. Excuse me. I'm not an emotional person, but anyway, I can't help it. It scares me. I love this place. I've lived in Florida, taught school 1 year there. I've lived in other states. I lived in Switzerland for a while and worked there. I lived in overseas for a couple of years and worked and lived there. And I've lived in some other states. And I keep coming back here. I was born in Yarmouth. Keep coming back here. I grew up in Bowdoin. And I keep coming back here because this is where I want to be. And some of the places I've been, I don't understand why people would fight for that land. But I can see why anybody would fight to stay here. And it bothers me immensely that my children, my grandkids, I take them out in my boat in the summertime. We fish for mackerel off the coast. I take them inland in the fall, and we see Maine's beauty at another time of year. And it's so beautiful, and it's such a wonderful place to live. The values are incredible, and people can't stay. And I don't, I can't in all conscience let that hang. So, I agreed to run. One of the reasons that we're here is because of jobs tonight, this forum. I have a very strong work ethic. I started work, my dad died in World War II. I was 6 years old. I started working in those days when I was 8. I worked in Bowdoin for Harry Kraut's Gardens. I worked for 40 cents an hour from the time I was 8 years old until I was in high school. And the rule in my mother's house, because my dad was dead, was you pay half of your wages for room and board. That was fair to me. I grew up that way. And I've done almost every job you can imagine since then. When my wife and I were married, and I was teaching school then, I've always had a couple of other jobs. I worked at Brunswick, Maine Harbor down on Main Street. I worked at Brunswick Coal Lumber. I worked for every contractor you can imagine, doing electrical and plumbing and all kinds of other things. I've sold men's clothing, made pizzas, done all of those kinds of things. I've always had to supplement my income. I believe very, very strongly in working. For the first time in my life, I don't have an extra job right now while I catch wild animals and move them for people. But come the first of the year, I'll be looking for work, I guess. Because I at this particular point in time, I don't have a real reason to get up in the morning. And it's something I can't stand. I want to work, and I think everybody in Maine that wants to work should be able to. And I believe everybody that wants to stay in Maine should have that right and that privilege. I also think that people who want to buy property here and stay here, they should be able to do that as well. So, I am not a legislature. Never been there before. Never thought I would even want to be. And I'm not a political person. But I do need a crusade. I do need a reason to get up in the morning. And I have my grandchildren to think about. And if I'm selfish, I think about only them. If I'm not selfish, I think about yours too. And I can do whatever I can about creating a strong work ethic in my own grandchildren and teaching them some of the skills and talents that I have so that they can supplement their income, probably not support a family. But if I do that for my grandchildren, then I hope somebody's going to be doing it for yours. And I just soon be that person. So I'm the Republican in this race, and whether you believe, just vote. That's all I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Mattie Daughtry, the Democratic Party candidate. Mattie is a lifelong Brunswick resident. She graduated from Brunswick High School and Smith College. She is a partner at McCoy Associates and works as an assistant to Michelle Stapleton, a local photographer, and she also runs her own photography business. Until recently, she was the communications associate for Maine's Majority, and prior to that, she worked as a curator for Brunswick-based ESA Maine, an organization serving people with disabilities. Please welcome Mattie Daughtry.
Can you guys hear me? Do I even need the mic, or is the mic being used for recording? Well, my name is Mattie Daughtry, and I'm so glad you can all be here tonight. I first want to thank Quinby House for putting together this event, and thank you to their faculty advisor, Laura Henry, for having us here. And I also want to say this is a personal note. When I was a little kid, I told my parents I'd be going to Bowdoin. Well, that didn't work out, but one of the reasons I said I was going to Bowdoin was so I could live in Quinby House. I was obsessed with this building as a little kid from Main Street. As they said, I grew up here in Brunswick. I went to Brunswick High School, and I was fortunate enough to go off to Smith College and then came back and got firsthand experience about how hard it is to get a job in this economy. I graduated and had the lucky chance to graduate into one of the worst economic recessions this country has seen back in 2008. And I was privileged because of our creative economy here in Brunswick to be able to come back and work in my hometown that I love. And I think I'm going to stick to the topic of jobs and economic development in my opening statement. What I think we need to look at is that Maine right now was ranked as the 3rd slowest economy in the country. We're not growing like the rest of the US. I mean, we're all having a hard time, but we need to look at why Maine isn't growing at that same rate. We need to be creating sustainable economic development that moves us forward. There was a 2006 Brookings report that showed that Maine has the potential for smart growth if we embrace what makes us great. This is what I love about this. They said that Maine has an incredible quality of place. That's why people come here. That's why businesses relocate here. And we're also one of the few states in the nation that still has their natural resources intact. And the report basically suggested that in order to continue to grow, that we embrace our natural resources and we create development that goes in tandem with those natural resources. One of the other things I'm really interested in is making sure that we're fostering small businesses, and we have a great example out here at Brunswick Landing. Senator Stan Grzelski has done a lot of work with Brunswick Landing. We have the Maine Technology Institute, which firsthand this year we saw a bad move as far as encouraging development and jobs here in Maine. Our governor vetoed a research and development bond that would have brought jobs right here to Brunswick. And that's the type of decisions we don't need to be making at the state level. The Maine Technology Institute, I don't know how many of you have seen it. I actually just found out about it about a year and a half ago and was blown away by what's being done here in Brunswick and in our state. We provide grants to different high-tech startups and different companies to bring the best and the brightest to Maine. Right here we had in Brunswick, I just gotta get his name because I don't want to misquote it, but Martin Grimness here on the Brunswick Landing helped bring about the implementation of the bridge in a backpack, and he got a grant from the Maine Technology Institute, so he was able to come up with this idea, and the brilliance of it, he then brought it up to the University of Maine Orono, and they worked on it in their lab, so our students got to see firsthand how it worked, and then they brought it back to Brunswick Landing to work on, and it's now a product that's in demand nationwide. So I think we need to be encouraging more developments like that. Another thing that really drives my desire to run, and one of the things I love the most about our town, is our creative economy. We have Bowdoin International Music Festival, we have the Theater Project, we have Maine State Music Theater, we have an incredible assortment of art galleries downtown, and it's not unique to Brunswick, it's all of Maine. We have a long history of artists coming here to work and to live. And it's not just something that's entertaining or something to look at to make the world a more beautiful place. The combined impact of Bowdoin International Music Festival and Maine State Music Theater is over $10 million annually. These organizations create further growth because people come in, they see a show, you have dinner in town, and the really truly wonderful thing about an active creative economy is, unlike other economic development, I mean, we're trying to get all the money here, but when you spend money in the arts, more of it stays local than going anywhere else. So I think we really need to be looking at making sure we foster and continue to grow our creative economy. And the number one thing that I think we could do, and I'd love to see implemented as a state representative, is to work towards creating a livable wage. It's hard when you graduate. Many people are underemployed. Over 30% of America's workers are on the poverty line because they work all day. They have hard work ethics that Grant was talking about. But even, tolling all day long at minimum wage, they can't make ends meet. At minimum wage here in Maine, if you worked a full-time job, you'd be making only about $15,000 a year, which really isn't enough to provide for health care. If you have more than a few children, it's hard to get food on the table. One of the best and brightest ideas we can do in this state is work towards raising the minimum wage. I love the example of Henry Ford. In 1912, he raised his wages that he was paying his workers to $5 a day, which was unheard of in that time. But he said, when he was asked why he decided to make this move, he wanted his workers to be able to buy a Model T Ford. And it worked. It invigorated the Ford company. And the thing that I love most is it created higher employment. So by paying our workers more, we were able to create new jobs. I think it's a basic tenet of any economic development and is crucial to moving Brunswick into the future. I think it's key that we look at the opportunities we have here in Maine, and I did talk about the Maine Technology Institute, but we had over 4,000 jobs in Maine that went unfilled this past year, and the problem was we didn't have skilled laborers to fill it. And the big reason I got into this campaign is education. As I said, I went to Brunswick High School, and I've seen the incredible things that this town and the state has done for me to train me to go out into the world. But we really need more educational opportunities for workers to get a competitive training to be able to compete for these high-paying jobs. And if we already have existing jobs that we need to fill, we need to make sure that we have workplace training. I'd like to encourage workplace education where an employer will have matching funds with the state to train them for jobs that they may not have gone to school for, but with a little bit of help, they might be ready to go out and do. Another huge asset we have is our community college system. The community colleges, for example, SMCC down in South Portland has been growing at 40%. It's an incredible institution, and we need to be fostering its development. Once again, Stan Gruzowski helped bring SMCC to the composites program here in Brunswick Landing. So we have kids who want to learn. We just need to make sure that we're providing opportunities for folks of all ages to be getting the training they need to step into these jobs. So as a state representative, I'd always be fighting for full education funding, but I'd also like to see us diversify our opportunities. I'm a big fan of apprenticeships. I'm an apprentice myself to Michelle Stapleton. As I said, I'm her assistant, and I've learned more firsthand working under a world-class photographer than I did in college in a photo lab. So we really need to take advantage of training the workers that we have here in Maine. I think I'm probably running out of time, but I think there's a lot of great things to discuss tonight, and I'm looking forward to all of your questions. Thank you.
Who is the candidate from the Green Party. Fred is well known in Brunswick as the founder of FW Horch Sustainable Goods and Supplies on Maine, which is a small sustainable goods store which he sold to new owners in 2011. He's married to Dr. Hadley Wilson Horch, an associate professor of biology and neurobiology at Bowdoin. They have 3 kids and live in Brunswick's downtown historic district. Fred would also like it to be known that despite the intense speculation in town, he's actually not going into the roofing business. He and Hadley just happened to hire Horch Roofing, no relation, for the latest home renovation project. So please welcome Mr. Fred Horch.
Well, thank you, Will. And for those who don't know, I live on Pleasant Street, which is a very well-traveled street, and there is a Horch roofing sign right in front of my house. So I can't tell you how many times people have asked me, so this is your new job, you're going to be a roofer. I have done roofing in the past, but I'm not planning to do that now. But before I start, I wanted to thank Quinby House here, the students for organizing this. Many of you may know that I ran for office in 2010, and in that race, I also organized a series of candidate forums, and this time it was really great to have some help finding a location, a venue. The students at Quinby House have done great. They treated us to dinner tonight, so thank you very much for hosting this. I also wanted to thank my opponents. When I announced in March that I was going to run again, there was some question whether we'd be able to have the forums, because you really can't do a forum by yourself. You need to have opponents who are willing to participate. So I want to thank both Grant and Mattie for joining me tonight and sharing their thoughts. And I also want to thank the voters and the taxpayers of Maine. All 3 of us are clean elections candidates, and if you don't know what that means, it means that this is on your nickel. We actually receive funding from the state to run our campaigns. We went out earlier this year, knocked on doors, raised some seed money, raised some qualifying contributions. But now the funding for this campaign, the funding that allows us to go out and reach you and talk about the issues, comes from your taxpayer dollars. So thank you to the state of Maine. Thank you, taxpayers. And I hope you feel like we're putting your money to good use tonight. So when people out of state ask me, how tough is the Maine economy? I say, well, let me tell you this. I'm applying for a job that pays $14,000 the first year, $10,000 the second year, has no job security, and there are 2 other people trying to get the position. And I'm running for legislature. I know there's a lot of other positions, but it's not a high-paid job. And that's the problem in Maine. We don't have a lot of high-paid jobs. We have too many low-paid, underpaid jobs. A lot of folks who are serving in your legislature are also working other jobs on the sides to make ends meet. And a lot of people, to raise their families, to put food on the table, have to do that. We have to work 2 and 3 jobs. So what can we do to change it? You know, I think everybody here loves Brunswick, right? We're all committed to Brunswick. We love our children. We want what's best for the future. The question is, what can we do? What policies can we change? What policies are currently being pursued that may not be effective? What new policies could we look at? So I'm the Green Independent in the race. I bring a new perspective. I come from the business world. I was a corporate attorney, and then I was a small business owner myself. I've also worked in the nonprofit field. I work for a statewide environmental group. So I have a lot of experience and a perspective on this that some of the other people in the race don't have. And to me, it seems like we should think in terms of short term, medium term, and long term. And in the short term, we really can't afford to cut out our public sector. We just can't afford to fire teachers, to fire public safety workers, to reduce the expenditures that we're making in the public sector. Doing that to save money now is going to just destroy our prospects for growth in the long run. So in the short term, we need to do everything we can to keep our teachers employed, keep our public safety workers employed, and keep maintaining our infrastructure. Here in town, we have a good example of why it's important to maintain infrastructure. Jordan Acres, one of the elementary schools in town, basically is condemned because we did not keep on top of the maintenance. The roof actually was dangerous. So there's a building now that we cannot use as a school because we didn't do a good job maintaining it. And so this idea of cutting the public sector, of trying to save money on taxes and trying to cut government without a real plan for how to take care of the infrastructure that we have in place is a very bad idea in the short term. We have some trouble with our tax rates, but we do have to make sure we make the investment in the short term in our public sector. If we do not do that, especially now, we're going to have an even weaker economy going forward. In the medium term, there is a huge opportunity and a huge challenge facing Maine. And it's one that doesn't get talked about enough. And when it does get talked about, I don't think it's talked about in the right context because a lot of people don't understand it. And that's energy. We are completely dependent on fossil fuel for all of our economic activity. Anybody that drove here today, except for my wife, probably drove here in a car that uses gasoline. We just happen to buy an all-electric car. But most of us buy gasoline. Does anybody know how much gasoline is made in Maine? None. Not a single drop. Okay, heating oil. Does anybody know how much heating oil is made in Maine? Again, not a drop. Every time you buy gasoline, every time you buy heating oil, you are basically paying an enormous tax that provides nothing of benefit to Maine. All that money leaves our economy and really has a hard time coming back. We are importing fuel, burning it once, waking up the next morning and saying, I need more fuel. Where can I get it? We're basically digging ourselves a big hole. So in the medium term, one of the most important things we can do is figure out our energy security. Now this is a big challenge. I know the legislature's been working on it, but I think we need to be more aggressive about it. I have a specific policy that I think has been proven in other countries to work more effectively than some of the approaches we've been taking in Maine, and that policy is called the feed-in tariff. So I'll hopefully have a chance to talk more about that on my website and other venues, but I want to say that in the medium term, I believe a focus on transitioning our economy away from fossil fuel dependence towards clean energy independence will really jumpstart our economy. It will provide direct jobs immediately, and it will set the stage for long-term growth, because once we're generating our own electricity in-state, once we have a secure energy supply that provides dependable and affordable energy, that can power our entire economy going forward. Right now, we are at tremendous risk. We are at tremendous financial risk because we cannot control the price of oil. The price of oil could climb 2 or 3 times this winter, and we could do nothing about it. Maine has no effective way to hedge against that increase, and we have no effective alternatives. And this is something that goes beyond any individual company. I used to have a store in town which would help people, become energy independent a little bit. But this is a policy where government needs to play a role. We need to create incentives for people to make that investment, for private businesses to earn a profit, making the transition away from fossil fuel dependence towards clean energy independence. So in the medium term, I'm talking 2 to 5 years, 2 to 10 years, that should really command a lot of attention, a lot more policy effort, and just a lot more support from the public. And one of the problems I think is we have this idea about how economics and jobs should work, and it tends to be a little bit back and forth because we have 2 parties here that are just fighting. and we're not bringing in independents. 40% of Maine voters are registered independent, either green independent or unenrolled, and yet only 1 out of 150 legislators is independent. Everyone else is either Democrat or Republican. So I don't think we're getting the full benefit of all the ideas in our society, and we're certainly not getting a full range of debate in our legislature by not allowing independents and unenrolled people to serve in our legislature. Then the third thing, I think, looking at long term. So short term, again, I think we need to maintain our public sector investment. Medium term, we need to make this transition to clean energy. In the long term, there's only 2 ways to grow your economy. Now, people talk a lot about regulation and talk about tax policies, and I'm going to make an analogy here. It's like riding a bicycle, right? If you want to get somewhere, you can use your brakes, you can shift your gears, and that will slow you down, it will change how much effort you put into riding your bicycle. That's like tax policy and regulation. You can kill an economy with bad regulation and bad tax policy. You can definitely stop a bicycle by putting on the brakes, but you can't move forward unless you do something different. And what the drivers of economic growth are 2 things: population growth and productivity gains. Now, Maine is an aging state. We cannot count on population gains. We also are not eager to bring a lot of immigrants into our state. I think that's a mistake. That would help us grow our economy, but a lot of people don't agree about bringing immigrants into our state. So we pretty much have to accept the fact that we're not going to have a lot of population growth. If you have a business, you can't count on a lot of new customers, young customers growing up and coming into your business. You've got to make do with the existing people we have in the state. So in order to grow our economy, in order to improve the living standards for everybody, that leaves productivity gains. So how do you increase people's productivity? How do you get people to do more with less, become more efficient? Well, first you cut out waste. That's always important. But you also have to invest. We have to invest in research and education. And I want to say some good things. I think we've done a fantastic job. And again, Senator Daughtry, there was a lot of respect for this and a lot of credit. We have made some very good investments here at Brunswick Landing. We have transitioned from a base, a Navy base, that really was an anchor for our community. It was an anchor in a good and bad way. It kept us from going backwards, but it also kept us from moving forward. We could count on a certain number of jobs, but we couldn't grow there. Now that the Navy has left and we have that property to develop, we've done a very smart thing by bringing in a community college. We're building a renewable energy center. These are the right kinds of investments to make. So as your legislator, I would do everything I can to work with Scan and others in our legislature to continue to make these investments and to make sure that we invest in the research and education, which is going to allow us to increase our productivity. And that is how we're going to grow our economy in the long term. I just want to say something about the community college right now. We have 380 students. I went to a talk yesterday. I met Steve Levesque, who's the executive director of the Mid-Coast Regional Redevelopment Authority. And those are the folks that are in charge of the redevelopment on the base. And he was saying now, so we've got hundreds of students at the community college already coming to Brunswick. In a couple of years, we will have thousands of students there. And again, that is because our state has made the investment in the community college. This is the right kind of investment to make. This is going to allow us to have the economic growth, to have the good jobs, to have the opportunities for our children and grandchildren that we all want, expect, and deserve. So I think that's a really great thing. I have no idea how much time I have left. Does anybody want to give me a time check?
Not much.
Not much. Okay. Well, let me, again, we're going to have a forum on education and healthcare. Those are also critical pieces. I see all these as related to job creation and economic developments, but I'll hold off on my thoughts on healthcare and education. And again, I just want to wrap up with my thoughts as a small business owner. I think that the important thing that we should look at here in Maine, when we think about jobs and economic development, is we should be looking at students like you, who are starting your career, students who are full of good ideas, who think you know everything, who just think you cannot fail, and we should find ways to attract you, retain you, and recruit you to start businesses. And so my big pitch, aside from the community college, I'd like to see what I'm calling a small business incubator developed at the base. This would be a place where you can get a place to rent, some other people with shared ideas and a shared passion for entrepreneurship, but we can get a center there where people want to start businesses, who want to start small, who have a commitment to Maine, who want to live in Maine, and have a good idea, but maybe they lack access to capital, maybe they don't have the right mentors, maybe they just need to find the right partners to put it all together. Mattie mentioned the Maine Technology Institute. That's a piece of it. But here at Brunswick Landing, we could create a small business incubator. We could grow new businesses from the ground up, and you could create your own opportunities. I don't think we need to bring in businesses to hire you and tell you what to do. I think we need to unleash the potential of Maine's young people. And that is what I think we need to do to create jobs and economic opportunity for you and everyone in the future. So I'll stop talking on that note. Thanks for your attention.
But first, I'd just like to thank the folks filming in the back. I think this is going to be on Brunswick Public Access TV channel 3.
Yep.
Yeah, channel 3. So just wanted to point that out. So we're going to open the floor up to questions now. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and try and keep your questions short and sweet so that we can get through as many people as possible. Yep.
I just wanted to say I was at the same luncheon that Fred was at yesterday, and there actually is an incubator for small business here in Brunswick, and it's at the high school, and it's sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, and it's a whole program for young people to learn about entrepreneurship. And but my question has to do with women's health issues and women's choice issues, and I'd like to know where each candidate stands on those, because those are so important to our economy and our jobs. Thank you.
Who would like to start there?
I'll jump right in. I fully believe in a woman's right to choose. And as your state representative, I would always fight hard to protect a woman's right to choose. So that's all there is to say. Yes.
Me too.
That didn't sound to me like health issues. Is that what you were referring to?
It has to do with women's health, and it has to do with women's jobs and women's economies.
Well, I also believe in a woman's right. And if we're talking abortion, then I believe, or lack of abortion, I believe everybody should have that choice. It never came up in my family but I believe it. So,
Can I jump in
that's all I have to say.
Sure, man.
Maybe to sort of address your question about the women economy, one thing we do need to address and would be, as your state representative, I'd be thrilled to examine this. Women still only make 77 cents to the dollar that men make. And part of raising minimum wage is that 2/3 of women are the sole breadwinners. 2/3 of single women are the sole breadwinners and have a huge deficit of trying to catch up in the economic game when they're not making as much as the rest of their male colleagues. So we need to make sure that women have access to health care, have access to the right to choose, but we also need to make sure that we're breaking the cycle of poverty by encouraging economic opportunities for women, specifically by raising the minimum wage.
I'll jump in on that. If we're talking economic opportunities for women, one of the most important things is a preschool for low-income families. Because if you're a single mom trying to raise kids, if we expect our low-income families to work their way out of poverty, we've got to provide daycare for young children. I have 3 kids myself, and my wife and I have found ways to make it work, but we also were fortunate enough to be able to pay for excellent preschool here through Bowdoin College. Most single mothers in Maine are not cannot take advantage of that same opportunity because they lack the money. And so if you really want to, if you're serious about education opportunities for women, then you do need to look seriously at public preschool for young children and daycare, affordable daycare for working families.
Yep, way in the back.
The next few years, the Maine State Legislature is going to have a lot of opportunity to direct the funding that's coming out of the Affordable Care Act in terms of creating the health exchanges and all the money that is going to be coming in from Medicare. So I want to know how you all feel about the Affordable Care Act and whether you will fight for its full implementation.
I just want to invite you to come to our 3rd forum, which will be on the issue of healthcare. I'm going to jump in and just say that that's a very loaded question because there's a better way to do it. And so I have a more nuanced answer than should we do it the way we're currently planning to do it. And my answer is we really need to think about private health care and public health insurance. There's a difference between the private health care and the insurance market. And the way that we've made a compromise at the national level is to allow private health insurance. And it is very difficult to control costs and to provide universal coverage at an affordable rate when you have private insurance markets. And even if you do these exchanges, I'll just give you one example. If you're a business owner and you're trying to shop around health insurance for your employees, it is an incredibly time-consuming and incredibly stressful, and in the end, an incredibly wasteful use of your time. There are much better things that every single family, every single business owner, and every single doctor, and every single hospital could be worrying about than what does this particular insurance company choose to reimburse? Which of these agents that I'm talking to is going to let my patient live or die? This is just a bad system. So unfortunately, you get into a position where it's like, do you want to shoot yourself in the left toe or the right toe? You know, this is not a good system. But it's what we have. So the question is, do we have to accept it or can we move to a better system? The answer is, we do not have to accept this. Maine could go to a public health insurance system that covers everyone, even under the national system. And so that's what I'll be working for, and I'll have much more information about that at our third forum, which will be at People Plus on the 26th of September. So I encourage everybody who's interested in healthcare issues to join us for that forum.
I'd just like to say, first off, I'm an advocate for single-payer healthcare. It is frightening how much we as Americans pay for health, which is one of our core necessities to basically exist. I am in favor of the Affordable Care Act. I am very impressed at what President Obama has accomplished in his first 4 years. I would have liked to see more go into the Affordable Care Act, but I think it's an excellent start that we can grow out from. I was up in Augusta when I was doing reporting and legislative research and saw that the majority fought against establishing the public health exchanges, which would have helped us implement the Affordable Care Act. So as your state legislature, I'd be working very hard to make sure we're implementing the Affordable Care Act to provide us with the most affordable insurance we can get. I'd also be very proud to hopefully introduce a single-payer health care bill along with Representative Charlie Priest here in Brunswick, who without fail has every year introduced a single-payer health insurance bill, with Stan too. So that would be one of my goals, but I would like to see us expanding. We have an incredible opportunity with the Affordable Care Act to expand Medicare and be able to get more people in at a low rate and essentially expand our public option. Under the current administration, LePage and Attorney General Bill Schneider have made it very clear that they have no interest in doing that. Instead, they'd rather slice what we have. They've already taken large groups off of our insurance program. We've cut prescription drug assistance for elderly. We've cut Head Start, which isn't exactly healthcare, but it's part of that creating a healthy start for your life. We've cut insurance for 19 to 20-year-olds, and we've raised the level at which you can get a little help on your health insurance if you're under the poverty level. One good thing is that, I don't know if you folks saw, but the state of Maine sued to see if they could get away with not implementing the Medicare expansion. Well, they were thrown out and sent back to Maine. It happened this afternoon. We are going to expand Medicare. I'm sorry, you're not going to get your way on this one, and I would be very proud and very excited to work on the issue of healthcare. My godmother, who, not to get emotional like Grant, my godmother was Charlene Rydell, who was a state rep, and she helped raise me along with the wonderful group of second moms who are back there. And she was absolutely crucial. Indirigo, yes, Indirigo Health, and starting one of our first attempts to get that affordable healthcare system that covers everyone. And I watched her die of cancer and watched what we had to do with the healthcare system, and I would be so privileged to represent you and be up there fighting in her legacy to make sure that in my lifetime we see affordable health insurance right here.
Out of the three of us up here, obviously I'm the one that's going to need it before they do. Thank you. I also worked in the public education system, and it jerks your heart when you see that, when you understand that the school nurse in the schools where there is a nurse is the only healthcare an awful lot of the kids have. The numbers are huge, more than 50%. I don't remember exactly how many, but so the kids that come to school on the bus, there is no health care that they have. All they can do is go to a nurse and ask for whatever she can do with them. So obviously it needs to happen. Everybody needs to be able to have insurance somehow or other. My son's in the military, and the reason he went there, one of them, is because of insurance. And my daughter that's working at L. Beans, that's a big deal. The reason she's there, she has to have insurance, like we all do. And so everybody obviously should have it. And I would work towards that as well. Thank you.
Yep, over here.
Food, F-O-O-D. We all eat, of course, and it's definitely essential for our life. And once upon a time, about 100 years ago, Maine produced about 80% of its food and imported 20%. Those percentages are now reversed, so that we import 80% of our food and we only grow 20%. In fact, it's actually lower than 20%. I know that there are many efforts made in Maine and also locally for enabling small farmers and community-supported agriculture and on those kind of programs. But I wonder, for example, how do you see us being able to capitalize on those initiatives and also to go further so that we can maybe go back to 80%?
Well, I'll jump in on that. That's a great question. Last election, one of the topics for the forum was food, and I chose that topic because I think it's an overlooked aspect of our economy. And thanks for bringing it up, John. That a couple generations ago, we were all farmers, pretty much. My grandfather was Canadian and had a farm and moved down to the United States to work in the factory, and that's pretty much the transition. We've gone from farming to manufacturing and now into a service economy. When you look at the numbers, the farms in Maine, they're just not very good ways to earn a living. It is really, really hard to be a farmer. It's hard to make money. Food is incredibly cheap. We truck a lot of food all the way across North America, from Mexico and Canada to Maine. I think the numbers I read, it's like 15% of the food we eat in Maine is produced in Maine. There's a great event coming up, Common Ground Fair, which you can get all the latest and greatest. But to answer the question, what can we do? One of the things that we really need to think about is, if you're a farmer and you're growing food, how do we get that food to the people who need it? How could we package the food? How can we get your food as a small farmer or even a mid-sized farm in Maine into the food system? I talked to a lot of farmers and I talked to a lot of people who want to serve local food, and that is the big challenge. Is, when you have a small, like let's say you're trying to feed Bowdoin College. I mean, think how many potatoes we ate tonight. A small farm has trouble supplying that many, so you have to get together with other farmers. So anything we can do to help farmers get their food into the distribution system is a good thing. And I believe there is an opportunity here at Brunswick Landing, perhaps, to have a food distribution, a food processing center, so the local area farms have a system, have a way to get their food packaged and into the system. So you get, an acre of potatoes from this farmer, from that farmer, and pretty soon you have, some potatoes that you can serve to Bowdoin College. And I think this is something that would benefit from a public-private partnership, because again, the return on investment is so small, and yet it is so important to our future well-being. And again, this gets to our energy dependence. It's working pretty well for us right now when gas is less than $4 a gallon, but gas does not always have to be $4 a gallon, and we don't know when it might go to $8 or $12 a gallon. And when it does, we are at the end of that distribution line. The trucks from California might decide to stop in Chicago and not make it all the way over to Maine. And if that were to start happening, we would be in a world of hurt. So this is why it's appropriate for the state government and folks who care about long-term well-being to get involved and don't just leave it to the market. Because right now, the incentive is not to invest in the long term. nobody's in the private market worrying about people starving in 10 years. That's way beyond their investment horizon, and they don't, they're just in business to make money. But the state government, those of us who are elected officials, need to worry about this. How secure is our food supply? And you can't just suddenly decide, okay, we're going to start growing food, everybody. Start making farms. You cannot start farms up. You need to invest. You need to have these farms productive. You need to have people who understand how to grow food. And you need to have that food production equipment and system and that whole ability to feed your population in place. So this is too important, I think, to leave it to the way it's being done now. And again, one small part we could play here with Brunswick Landing, and maybe a role for state government, is to invest in some regional distribution and food processing and packaging centers. So thanks for the question.
That's a great question. Honest confession, one of my other big loves is food. I have a food blog. I've worked on an organic farm, and it's an issue that we need to really look at. But unlike Fred, I've got to say I'm feeling really optimistic about local agriculture. Maine is one of the few states where the average age of a farmer is going down. We're getting young people to come into Maine and getting them to start small local farms. We have a thriving system which is just prepped and ready for more growth and more opportunities. One of the things that I'm really interested in is the Maine School Garden Network. I think we need to be, once again I say my answer to everything is education, but a lot of kids grow up not knowing where their food comes from. In high school I got a little bit of a reputation because I was the only kid in my English class who knew the names of the cows in her freezer and the name of the cow where her milk came from. But that's the way I grew up. I've worked on farms and I've seen firsthand what goes into making your salad. So by having school gardens on the campuses of our schools, kids get a first-hand experience of what it takes to grow that head of lettuce. And in turn gives you a little more respect. I mean, the first summer I picked arugula, boy, you get a lot of respect for a finicky Italian crop. You think about when you're eating that salad, what went in there to get it to go there. So I think we really need to start making sure that children understand the implications of what they're eating. There's a lot of economic development opportunities to keep food here locally in Maine. A lot of large farmers do have contracts with large processors that then moves it out of state, and we should be exploring more avenues to keep the food to stay here. But we already have folks out there trying to do this. How many of you have tried moo milk? Raise your hand. Anyone? Okay, you all need to go to your grocery store and look for moo milk. It's a group of organic farmers that have banded together to be able to get their products into local grocery stores. So by creating a sort of incubator of farms, as a larger group, they're able to get marketing, contracts with the local grocery stores, and get their products right here in Maine. We also have backyard B2B tomatoes. I don't know if you've seen those. Those are up in Madison. That's an excellent example of us keeping food here in Maine. And in fact, they're so successful, they're shipping their tomatoes out of Maine. I mean, I think that's a great opportunity. Another part of education, encouraging more local food. Common Ground is a great event. You should all go there. My parents are of the age where, that's where I grew up, was at the Common Ground Fair. And Maine Organic Farmers and Growers Association, Matthea, has an incredible apprenticeship program where you can come in and apprentice with a farmer, learn how to grow your goods, how to make a profit, and how to survive as a farmer, which is a hard endeavor to take on. But they're training kids and people of all age right here in Maine on how to go out and make a living as a farmer. Crystal Springs Farm is an excellent example of community-supported agriculture. And just to wrap things out, I think we have a golden opportunity here in Maine. I think we're already getting food to stay local, and we just need to stay on that path. And as a state representative, I think we need to invest in opportunities to make sure that we're keeping businesses like Backyard Beauty and Moo Milk. Yes, Moo Milk, go buy some right here.
Well, what am I going to say? Let's raise giant pumpkins. No, I'm being facetious. First 12 years of my working life, I worked in the truck gardens in Bowdoin. I already said that. And that acreage is so incredibly valuable now, and it's all become house lots. When I was a young kid growing up, hate to say it before electricity, but it was almost there. We had an ice box in our house when I was 6 years old, and we had chickens and we had pigs. And I can remember as a young guy, probably 7 years old, riding down to Thompson, where the ball field is across from the. Well, anyway, on the Forsyth Road, and buying a piglet for 25 cents. And we took it back to Bowdoin and raised it, and we ate it in the fall. And so that's kind of the way things used to be. And it's just not glamorous anymore. You know, it should be perhaps, but we need to create. If you want more stuff being grown here in the States, you need to create some kind of incentive for somebody to be able to do it. The acreage I used to pick when I worked for Krauss many years. 300 dozen ears of corn had to be on the Hannaford's shelf by 7 o'clock in the morning. That's when I started picking at 3, and we picked by field. That's kind of gone away, mostly because I guess that it's not glamorous, and that nice flat bottom land there is nicer to build a house on than it is to grow crops. And if you want to really be complaining about it, somebody said to me today, they started spreading manure over Thompson. That's what we've done to ourselves. You know, we complain because somebody is spreading manure so that they can grow corn or whatever else, and we complain about the very people that are feeding us. When I was in college, I picked apples as a means of supplementing my income. And you know, now we can't find people to pick the apples anymore. We import them from some other country, a long ways away. My grandfather was a potato farmer when I was a really small guy. So we all have it in our background and all that kind of stuff, but we have to make some kind of incentive for the farmers to be growing stuff here in the state of Maine, and maybe you have to, well, it's probably not the right thing to say, but when I worked for him so many years ago, the seed was provided by companies from out of state because they wanted the whole crop when it was harvested. And I believe that's the way the agriculture industry works today. You know, the poor farmer does not have the money to indulge in his own self, but he might have farmland to do it with. So somebody comes from some other place, some other state, and says, you know, you plant 600 acres of corn or whatever it is for me, and I'll provide the seed corn. I went up to Bell Farms this spring. I stock a lot of food in my house, and I buy potatoes 50 pounds at a time. I like to peel potatoes, and I like to eat potatoes. I'm Irish. And so, anyway, but they planted a 1,000-acre field with potatoes, and then the river flooded it. And so they lost a big percentage of that field, and then they didn't have seed potatoes anymore. And so, you know, those kinds of things happen, and we're not particularly friendly to farmers in this state. And you know, that is certainly one of the issues that we have to deal with more strongly. It wasn't something that I was planning on this evening, but it certainly is an awfully good idea. And the pumpkins that I grow giant pumpkins with my kids in school, and I am affiliated with the Damascotta thing, and a lot of pumpkins get put up in the air, and dropped on cars and race cars, things like that. But you know, it's a wonderful thing, and I try to teach it to my kids in school.
Can I just see a show of hands how many people would like to ask questions at some point tonight?
Excuse me. I'd like to come back to Brunswick Landing, which is so important to this community. You've all talked about the progress made there and some of the rosy picture, but it's also true that the governor, who claims to be open for business, and the legislature have thrown up some roadblocks that have made it very difficult for Brunswick Landing. I'd like to ask each of you to talk about, unless you think the legislature has done everything right, talk about something that the legislature has done, in your opinion, wrong with regard to Brunswick Landing that you, as a legislator, would do otherwise.
How much time do you want to give ourselves for?
Say about a minute and a half each. Does that make sense? minutes.
You wanna take that number?
I have complete ignorance. I believe that jobs have to be created out there. When Brunswick was now Brunswick Landing was a toxic waste site, I was out there with one of those people, one of the teachers that was on those investigations and so on. That's in the past. I don't think it's all been cleaned up, but nevertheless, it's still in the past. I have to examine it all more closely. I can't answer you, Joe.
Well, I think my beef would be more with the governor than with the legislature, honestly. I mean, the bonds that we passed and then were not spent, that seems to just jump out at me as the biggest problem. So if you could override a veto and make sure that the money that's been allocated and people want to spend and invest actually gets spent, that would be a very good thing. And I think, hopefully, as the Green Independent up there, I'm not part of the Democrats, I'm not part of the Republicans, I could maybe broker some deals where we could move things through and get some agreement across party lines. There's no promises, but that would be my hope, is to be able to work, to at least listen to both sides and be a broker between really different ideas about how economic development should happen.
So I agree with Fred. I think one of the major issues is our governor, but another issue is individual legislatures within both parties not willing to stand up and override a veto. One of the major things in Brunswick that LePage did to hurt us was vetoing the research and development bond, which had $20 million attached to it, and at least $5 million would have been coming here to Brunswick to reinvigorate the infrastructure at Brunswick Landing, and would have been helping out the Maine Technology Institute and helping out Mira. The second biggest thing that scares the living daylights out of me as both a Brunswick resident and a Mainer is LePage's economic plan that they pushed through with the Republican majority. It is a fiscally irresponsible plan. It's not fiscally prudent or conservative. It just starts hacking things to bits, and the result of it will be that as Brunswick residents, our municipal taxes will be raised to meet the giant hole that LePage has left. We've cut funding to Head Start. We've cut funding to basic health care. We've cut funding even to, this one scared me, people who provide basic counseling services in our prisons. They've privatized the psychological services there. We need to reverse that economic plan and instead look at a way to balance our budget where we're not shooting ourselves in the foot. We need to build from the middle out, and that's probably the biggest disservice that our governor has done, is basically set our state up for failure.
Ask Grant, although I would like to have an answer of all three of you. Grant, I really feel sorry for you because you're talking about making sure that your grandkids will have jobs. But before the jobs come, I would suggest that your grandkids be educated first.
Yes.
And without the education, as the governor and the majority of the legislature in Augusta says, we ain't gonna get none.
Well,
What are you going to do once you are elected?
I told you I retired a year ago. I used to teach science, and it's a passion for me. It's the most important thing in my life, has been. And I worked part-time jobs throughout my whole teaching career so that I could add to my science curriculum when I was in school. And I saved those thousands of dollars worth of things that I have, and they're in my basement in my house. And my grandsons go to Durham Community School, and I've locked myself in this school year for every Friday. I'm over there with them, my grandkids and the other kids in the school, and I'm doing extra science free, except of course what my lessons cost me to teach. And so my plan has been, before I even thought about running for the legislature, was doing everything I could to educate my kids, my grandkids, in the best way that I possibly could. I am supplementing the science curriculum over there for every kid in the school. The Fridays that I'm there, I will be going from kindergarten through 6th grade and doing science. It happens to be this month we're working on a garden that we have there, and my mandate from the principal is measurement, because the teachers have to teach what they have to teach, but I can do measurement. It was something I discussed with him over the summer, and I will teach the kids how to measure in whatever the units are that they have to learn on whatever grade level they are in. So my plan was, and still is, I guess, my plan was to do everything I possibly can for my grandkids to make them as able as possible to compete in the world. And I'm doing that with the school that they go to, and I expanded my view a little bit to think, well, I want to do it for some other kids besides just my own grandkids, and hence my reason for running for the legislature. Education is important. It's the most important thing in my life, always has been. And educating my grandkids now is the most important thing. So I guess that's all I can say. I'll talk about it another night.
Mattie or Fred, would you like to comment on that? Or
I just say it's true, we do need to be educating our kids. One of the major reasons why I'm so thrilled to be able to live in my hometown is because of the education I did receive here in Brunswick. And I was very scared by what I saw when I was working as a researcher up in Augusta, where they're trying to dismantle public education. And Grant's right, we need to be increasing our school budgets. It's the smartest investment we can make. I mean, you can't grow your economy, you can't improve healthcare unless we're making sure that our kids are instilled with a love of learning and ready to go out in the world. So I agree with Grant, and that's one of the major reasons I'm running, is to make sure we're protecting our public education system. Education's a right, not a privilege.
I agree with that. Well, I'm hoping to keep Grant here in Brunswick so he can go into my son's classroom. I think they'd have a lot more fun listening to him talk about science than me talk about law and politics. But I think for Brunswick, and we'll talk about this probably next week, the state budget is a big issue. And there is a mandate to fund 55% of the cost of local school budgets by the state. So that would be a real priority for me, and I totally agree that educational opportunities precedes economic opportunity. We need to invest in education. That's the only way we can have a thriving economy in years ahead.
What do you think are some of Maine's strongest economic engines for all three?
Well, our people, for sure. I mean, that we have ingenuity, we have hard work ethic, we have actually a very well-educated population. That's a huge competitive advantage, and we have a great quality of place. And so if we play our cards right, people want to come here to live, they want to stay here, they want to have businesses. Some things we need to work on are telecommunications, so that you can have a job in Maine and work for people anywhere in the world. I just lived in Japan for a year, and every night I was Skyping with people here in Brunswick, which is amazing. We have full telecommunication capability, and so there's no reason why someone couldn't work and live in Maine, and actually the ownership of the corporation could be in Singapore or anywhere else. So definitely our people and our place are two of the real strong advantages we have. And as Mattie alluded to earlier, we have unspoiled nature, we have great tourism opportunities, we have world-renowned food in lobster. People think about Maine potatoes very favorably. So we have a lot of opportunities. One thing we don't have, and we shouldn't work to have, is the lowest tax rate in the world. We are never going to be able to race to the bottom and cut taxes for businesses. So if that is our strategy, to try to attract businesses here by just giving them tax breaks, that's a loser. And so we need to carefully think about having fair and low taxes, but not trying to cut deals for people, but instead play to our strengths, which again are people, place, and our amazing natural assets.
Well, I was in Japan a few years ago. I took 12 8th graders from my middle school with me when we had a program going. And came back. I was there just that one time. Never would have gone to Japan otherwise. But when I came back, I was trying to think of what struck me about Japan, the difference between Japan and Maine. And I was on my way to Sugarloaf for a conference up there, a presentation I was doing, a science presentation. And I was coming back through countryside, and it struck me. In Japan, the huge companies exist, and everybody's part of a huge corporation, and they put an awful lot of their personal life and their family and everything else into the corporation. In Maine, you can't ride around any place in Maine without seeing a little buildings, you know, so-and-so's painting contractor, or so-and-so's garage, or so-and-so's body shop, or whatever. Maine, we have an awful lot of very, very independent people, small business operators. And it occurs to me that one of the things that is a strength that we have here in Maine. Unfortunately, most of those businesses only last one generation. You drive by these places, you'll see it's going into the ground. But it is a strength here, and that's probably one of those things that we should be very much encouraging somehow, however you can.
We have several different economic engines that are vital to Maine, and I have to agree with everything that both my opponents just said. A huge thing is our people, our workforce, and especially our quality of place. And our quality of place drives a lot of our other economic engines. For example, tourism is a huge industry here. It brings in tons and tons of money. We're very lucky to have a recovering manufacturing sector, which is not common in this country right now after the recession. We have Maine lobster, we have bountiful marine resources, and as a state representative, we need to be looking at how to encourage and support them, because the Northeast was just declared basically a federal disaster. Our marine fisheries are in trouble. So we need to make sure that we're advertising them, that we're driving up the demand for what we can sell, and that we're looking at sustainable futures to make sure that, you know, my great-great-grandchildren can hopefully have the same delicious haddock that I had 2 days ago. As I said before, I really think creative economy, so it's a huge part of Maine. Our high-tech sectors that we're lucky enough to have here in Brunswick is huge. It's going to be bringing us national attention. Composites is incredible what we're doing here at the Brunswick Landing. Again, we have an incredible incubator already in place that's bringing business here to Brunswick. We really need to be plugging that and advertising what we do here in Brunswick and Maine. And then another thing I would say is obviously food and agriculture, as I was plugging before, but I think another one of our great economic engines is education. Think about the top-notch schools that we have here through UMaine. Our community college system is growing at 40%, which is phenomenal. We also have Bowdoin and Bates and Colby, and people come here because of our quality of place and quality of education. I mean, I'm always impressed by how many people in Brunswick went to Bowdoin, fell in love, stayed here. So that's what I think.
Back over here.
I'm Jackie Starforest. I'm not actually in this district, but I've gotten involved in much more partisan politics this year after watching what's gone on with the LePage administration. My concern is really with having an effective response to what I regard as both some bullying and some bad practice in Augusta. My background is environmental conservation. It's an issue I care passionately about, and I watched this year as a lot of the folks I've worked with in the past have lost their jobs or been marginalized or silenced. And as we've really dismantled what has made Maine a forward-thinking, environmentally protective state. So I'm really looking for effective representation in Augusta, and that's why I guess I'm wondering, in the real politic world, people vote in a caucus, they vote as a group, and right now the Democrats are in the minority. So I myself regard having a strong response to LePage as really important. And I guess what I'm wondering, I guess this is really a question for Fred, I was surprised to see that one of your ads included a parent endorsement from Charlie Priest, who is a well-respected friend of mine, but also a well-respected local legislator. I was there the day that he endorsed Mattie, and I was really surprised, and I know you, so really disappointed to see that you took his quote out of context and made it seem like an endorsement when it certainly was not. So I guess I want to know what led to what I regard as a lapse of integrity, and my bigger question is, if electing a Green independent is such a good idea for Brunswick, why did you need to reach for the endorsement of a Democrat?
Well, thanks, Jackie. So, those who don't know, Jackie was kind enough to write a letter to the editor last election, letting people know that they shouldn't vote for a Green independent because they would risk electing a Republican. So, I'm glad to see you're still active in partisanship. And the quote that that's at issue, what happened was I read the paper, and this was a couple days before we were starting to table at the farmer's market. And I saw Charlie Priest basically talking about me in the paper, a quote about me. He said, Fred Horch is attractive to a lot of people, something to that effect. But what people don't realize, he's an independent, he'll be all alone in Augusta as an independent. That was his full quote. And so we decided we should do a piece that basically addressed that issue of being attractive to a lot of voters by putting Charlie's quote on that point next to a graph showing that I came within a few votes of beating the incumbent Democrat last cycle. And again, this gets back to Jackie's point about you can't afford to vote for a Green because you might accidentally elect a Republican. The way the voting district is split, it's about evenly split between independents and Democrats. There's 2-to-1 Democrats to Republicans. So we really felt it was important to let people know that this time, even the Democrats, Charlie Priest, obviously a well-known Democrat, was obviously not endorsing me. This was a quote in the paper. But he was conceding the point that I'm attractive to a lot of voters. So we put that quote next to a chart showing that I'm attractive to a lot of voters. And we also had a quote from Steve Mistler, who is a journalist, basically saying I ran a good campaign. So it was Charlie Priest, we sourced the quote so people could look it up in the paper. It was Steve Mistler, we sourced the quote so people could look up. He just said, I ran a very good campaign last time. And then a chart. And in the inside, this was a flyer I posted 2 days after that piece appeared on the front page of a local paper. And inside, I had a paragraph saying, the Democrats are going to say that, don't vote for me because even though you might be tempted to vote for me, I'm not going to be effective. So the whole piece was designed to respond to Charlie Priest's negative attack in the paper. And again, in politics, when you endorse your own person by talking about the other candidate, that's called a negative endorsement. You're basically saying why you shouldn't vote for the other person. So it was not, it wasn't exactly a straight-up endorsement by Charlie. Basically what he was saying is, don't vote for Fred, and then, somebody else said some nice things about Mattie. So that's how I used the quote. That's the context. Charlie was nice enough to email me, and he said, stop using my quote. I said, great, just let you know that piece was a one-time piece. This is my palm card. It's not on there. I know you're not endorsing me. That's not what it was all about. And I also wrote a letter to the editor, explaining this whole thing, and posted the piece. So if anyone's interested, you're welcome to go to my website, and you can read the piece. You can see if it's portraying that as an endorsement. I never intended to imply that Charlie endorsed me. I respect his work, and the point I was making, and the point that I think is important for voters to know, is that this time around, the argument about splitting the vote, the argument that Fred is just a fringe candidate, there's no chance he can win, is not a valid argument. And even elected Democrats are making that point. Again, the quote was, Fred Horch is very attractive to a lot of people. So he did say that. It was in the context of our election. It was in the context of who should you support. And so I felt that it was fair. Now again, we had an exchange of letters in the local paper. I presented my side of it. Thank you, Jackie, for bringing it up again. As far as I'm concerned, I hope everybody, after the front page article, after the letters going back and forth, and after tonight's forum, I hope everyone is clear. None of the prominent Democrats are endorsing me. That being said, after this election is over, we're going to sit down and we're going to work together to do what's best for Brunswick and Maine. I know that Charlie Priest has not let the independent Ben Shipman sit all by himself in Augusta. He works with Ben Shipman. This is just electoral politics. This is just partisanship. I'm sorry that this is the way it has to be, and I don't really want to play the game. But again, if the people who are endorsing the other people talk about why no one should vote for me, I think it is fair game for me to use those quotes and do a little bit of turnaround. So again, I stand by how I used it, and I really want to make it clear that I never thought that he endorsed me. That was not the intent of the piece. It's not how it came across to us. And if anybody has any questions about it, I'm happy to talk more about this. But again, I think this is just pure partisanship.
Can I jump in just real quick? I do want to address this, and I do think you're right. If someone's going after you, you have the right to address it, and I think that was the right thing to do. But I have to stand up for Grant and I's parties for a little bit here. You know, I have to say, we can't say, oh, the Democrats are going to smear this. They have special interest groups. No, I am running as a Democrat because I was raised a Democrat. But I've been in Augusta, and I've seen what's going on. Yes, we have a governor who is bellowing and saying everything's awful and blah, 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 blah. But I've seen firsthand Democrats and Republicans working together. You do not have to be an independent to make change happen up in Augusta. You stand for an incredible party. The Greens are, you know, you're not an independent, you're a Green, and that's something to embrace and be proud of. They stand for peace, they stand for core values that I've seen firsthand. I've seen what Jill Stein is standing for nationally. So I don't think it's a bad thing to be a Democrat or Republican. Grant and I both have our own reasons for being in our parties. I'm particularly proud of what our president has done in the past 5 years, and I've been 4 more years. But I'm running because Brunswick is what I love. And if I could re-register as just a Brunswick resident behind it, I would. One quick example of, I'm not even a legislator yet, and I've personally seen bipartisanship happen. I was covering as a reporter the Education Committee, and they're trying to defund public schools, and it was awful. I couldn't stand it. Senator Brian Langley is a very prominent Republican. He's the chair of the committee. He gave me an hour of his time. We sat down. I almost started sobbing about how much we need to stand up for our children. And the next day, he turned around, voted against LePage, and quoted me. So just because I'm a Democrat doesn't mean I can't work with everyone. I could be working to build hard coalitions. I know Grant here would be working with whomever he can get. You know, I wish all 3 of us get elected and go up there, but I have to say, don't slam the 2 parties if we're in them, because we believe in them.
Nobody said that Grant Connors, would you say that was? How'd you say that?
Grant Connors
the popular, or whatever.
I'll say it. Grant Connors is a popular scientist.
Yeah, well, no, whatever. But you know, I'm the white-haired guy, you see. So nobody's ever going to say, you know, he's worth any votes. But the point I think is, all of us have a rough road to hoe. I registered Republican in 1964. I was 21 then, and I've never seen any reason to change it. Plain and simple. And I'm rolling upstream in a Democratic town, and tonight I'm on a Democratic campus. How stupid could anybody be? and these 2 people invited me to show up. Well, you know, I had nothing else to do this evening.
Thanks. All right, I think we have time for maybe one more question. If we can keep it focused on jobs instead of arguing 2 other forums on healthcare and education. So let's go to the
East-West Highway. So this obviously pulls in environment as well, but part of the impetus for the East-West Highway is the economic argument. Where do you stand on that? What's the role of the state? They're talking about being privately funded, but obviously the state is playing a role. What do you have to say?
Can I jump in? No, no, and no. The East-West Highway is one of the worst economic ideas we've had. There have been 5 feasibility studies done in the past, Stan, how many years? 20 years? We've looked at this time and time again. Yes, we have an infrastructure problem we need to address, but bulldozing a stripe across our state is not the way to do it. And the thing that really bugs me about pursuing this is all the feasibility studies showed that it would have such a minimal economic impact on our state. It's a joke. It would create, I think the number in, I think it was the 1999 study, it was fewer than 500 jobs. So it's really just a highway for Canada. Canada to Canada. It's horrible for our environment, it's bad for jobs, it ruins our quality of place, it goes against, I think, everything the three of us stand up here for. I can't speak for either of them, but I think it's a horrible idea.
Well, I think you can tell if it's a good idea by whether they're willing to fund the study themselves. I mean, the fact that they asked for $300,000 of public funding, you know, that just tells you it's not a really good deal. So hopefully it's dead. Who knows? I think they're just, we've done it before. We've been down this path many, many times looking at it. There's already a rail corridor there that we probably could fix up and use. So that would be what I would, you know, if we had any state role to play, I would be trying to get rail to work better. And there's a lot of things that the state can do on that level because rail is a neglected infrastructure. And again, to put a plug in for Stan Grozowski, I know that rail is very near and dear to his heart, is near and dear to mine. And if people haven't heard, Amtrak is coming to Brunswick November 1st. So what I would say is go rail, go rail.
Well, one of the things that always happens whenever you put any kind of a highway in is the whole controversy about you know, taking land by eminent domain. It just steams up everybody in the whole state, and heaven forbid if you happen to be a property owner in the way. And that would just be another one of those catastrophes that wouldn't work. I would be against it also.
Okay, thank you all for your questions. At this time, each candidate can give about a 1 minute closing statement just to wrap things up. Just really. Let's go.
Place where people can grow businesses, where we get a group of people, we get some research and development, where we actually can create some really interesting partnerships. That's the kind of business incubator I had in mind. And it's not going to happen just through private investment. It would require partnerships from both the federal and the state government to make it happen. But I also want to say that it started to happen already. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory has been here, has talked to the folks at MIRA. They've talked about doing a living laboratory of renewable energy technologies on the base. It's very exciting work, but we could do more there. I also want to talk a little bit about how education ties into economic growth and how healthcare, how this all ties in. One of the problems we have, again, as a state with a lot of small businesses, is people are making decisions based on where can they get healthcare and how they can take care of their children. And so I think there's a real opportunity if we could do a universal coverage where everybody had healthcare. If you lost your job, it didn't matter because you still have healthcare. That would allow you to take more risks. It would really support the kinds of small businesses and the kind of economic opportunities that we have in Maine. So I think it's really important for Maine, even more than some other states, to have universal health coverage. It will really help our economic prospects. And also the idea of public preschool, of investing in children early. That allows families to get the 2 and 3 jobs they need to make ends meet, but it doesn't deny the children the attention and the ability to develop their talents at an early age and identify their skills, and really gives them a head start, long-term success. So I think universal health care and public preschool are two ideas that really play into our long-term economic prospects. So finally, to wrap up, again, in the short term, I think public investment in infrastructure. In the medium term, this idea of a transition to a clean energy economy. And in the long term, what we really need for good jobs and a healthy, sustainable economy is an investment in research and education. Thank you.
Once again, I want to thank you all for being here and for coming with your ideas and concerns. And I'll be sticking around afterwards. We'll you two to take some questions if anyone has any follow-up. So thank you all for being here. My basic philosophy when it comes to jobs and economy is we need to build from the middle out, not from the top down. We need to make sure we're reinvigorating Maine's middle class, that we're making sure we have quality jobs here in Brunswick, that we have folks who are educated to fill the vacancies that we have here in Maine now. That one big thing for me when it comes to all of this is we've been making the press a lot recently, but not for the reasons I'd like to. As your state representative, I'd like to sort of be a force against our biggest negative press governor and stand up for Maine and say, we have a great state here. That's why folks are coming here. That's why businesses are coming here, and come check us out. Another big reason we we need to look at what's going on in the future is we got to make sure we have sustainable long-term economic development. We have a lot of opportunities. It is a little scary with the recession, but I guess I'm an eternal optimist. And I'd also say a plug for myself. I'm a Democrat. I'm proud to be a Democrat, and even more than that, I'm proud to be your homegrown candidate. I was raised here. I'm a result of this community, and I can't thank you all enough for being here. So, have a good night.
I learned something tonight. If I get this job, I'm going to make $14,000. I only said that so you would laugh, okay? I believe in the power of a laugh, and if we can't do that, we certainly shouldn't be here, any of us in this room. I just want to say that I got a couple of 3 sentences. I'm not wise. I'm just older, and I've experienced life, and I've learned from it. I've decided in the last year since I retired that I'm going to spend those years, however many they be, with my grandkids and my grandkids' school, because that's where they are. And I'm going to do my science thing and whatever other things I can over there at school with them. I was at Korea today, and I'm helping some mentoring some kids over from the high school. I'll be doing that as well. Now, I put all of my eggs, and that's not good politics probably, all my eggs in one basket, which is my grandkids and my grandkids' school. If I go to the legislature, then I will be fighting for all the kids in District 66 and the state of Maine. And that would please me even more. So that's all I have to say. It would just be working for your grandkids as well as mine. And God knows they're all worth it.